Hi, Voices of the Bench community. I'm Laura Prosser, the digital marketing manager here for Ivoclar North America, and I would like to invite you to start following us on Instagram. It's your chance to obtain exclusive updates on product announcements, industry news, upcoming educational events, and heartwarming stories about our local team and industry professionals. So let's get social together. Simply start following us on Instagram at ivoclar.na. That's Instagram at ivoclar.na. We'll see you there.
Welcome to Voices from the Bench, a dental laboratory podcast. Send us an email at info@voicesfromthebench.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Greetings and welcome to episode 361 of Voices from the Bench. My name is Elvis.
And my name's Barbara, and I'm sad I'm going to miss Chicago, even though we're releasing this after Chicago, I think.
It's obvious. Maybe it's not, but we always record these things before the weekend event. So, see, I leave for Chicago tomorrow.
So today's Tuesday, so
Yep.
You leave Wednesday. Okay, gotcha.
Yep, and you are going to be missed, Barb.
All that work all by yourself, I'm so sorry. But I know you're going to be amazing and have a lot of guests and have a lot of content, but I'm going to miss you.
I say this now that it was okay, but let's report after.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so we really don't have anything to report, but I can say this, and with confidence, it was cold, and we missed you.
Well, thank you. Today's actually my dad's birthday. Today's the 18th of
Are you
of
effing serious?
Yeah, so it's just been... My brother's in town. Everybody's starting to roll into town, and we're just going to make the best of it. So I'm happy to see all my family, but
Absolutely.
wish it was under different circumstances. But thank you all for your thoughts. So have a good time.
Yeah. What is that? Fear of missing out? The FOMO?
Yep. I'll just stay updated through Facebook and Instagram and everything.
We will definitely make sure you're aware of the happenings.
Thank you. So next up, in just over a month,
Woohoo!
You and I will be at the exocad booth at the IDS, something that we wanted forever and ever, in Cologne, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, once a dream of ours on this podcast, and the amazing people at exocad made it a reality. Thank you guys so very much. So we will be set up for 5 days in hall number 1, booth AO40/CO40. Boy, if there's that many slashes, we're in trouble.
Just be glad it's not a dash.
Yeah, no. As long as I can say it correctly, we're good. Please come see us, guys. Get on the podcast. We want to talk to all kinds of people from all over the world. And we know this show brings them in. So come say hi. Get on the podcast.
Yeah, I can't imagine all the countries that go to this show. With it being so big. I mean, when we were in Spain, it was pretty cool because we got to talk to so many people from so many different countries. But this is going to be nuts.
Yes, I know. Cannot wait.
Let's make it a goal to talk to everybody from every country. Think we can make it happen?
And everybody wear your shirts.
Mm-hmm. So this week, we talked to a guy that's built a lab that does about 90% of his business in surgical guides. Now, unfortunately, Barb, even though we're talking about you not going to Chicago, you were actually not available for this conversation, which was sad. But
because you know how much I love implants and surgical.
So I was going to say something about that, but I wasn't sure. I had a wonderful nerdy time.
Yep.
But I got to have a delightful conversation with Vladimir Roman about his journey and his surgical guides. Vladimir learned his craft in the Air Force. Not only that, but he learned all aspects of dental technology in about 6 months. They really push it through there. Yeah.
I'll say.
After touring around, he went back to be an instructor at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where it was there that he found a Formlabs printer just kind of sitting there. Getting pushed by a few oral surgeons, Vladimir started to learn how to plan and print surgical guides. Now, after retiring from the Air Force, he eventually moves to Florida, where he started doing more and more guides, and it wasn't long before he had a bunch of printers and employees.
Nice.
Now his company, Romanax, did about 1,600 surgical guides last year
Wow.
alone. Yeah, that's nuts. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a great story of growth and success mixed with a whole lot of nerdy implant talk.
Oh no, I'm sure.
So join us as we chat with Vladimir Roman.
Are you a dental lab in need of more talent to improve your bottom line and keep production on schedule? Are you a dental tech with great skills but feel you're being limited at your current lab? Well, the answer is here. Hi, I'm Mark from Win-Win Go, and this is precisely why Win-Win Go was created. The dental lab and dental tech community needed a place where labs and technicians can meet, talk about their needs, and connect in ways that foster a win-win outcome. As a tech, if you're ready to make a change, thinking about moving in the next year, or just curious what's out there, sign up today. It's totally free. As a lab, you might be feeling the frustration of paying the big employment sites so much and getting so few tech candidates. We understand. They don't much care about our industry. WinWinGo.com is simply the best place for lab techs and lab owners to actively engage in creating their ideal future. WinWinGo.com. How dental techs find paradise.
This February, there are a lot of vendors to visit at Lab Day Chicago, and one you don't want to miss is Adite at booth E26. They will be showcasing their exciting new products and cutting-edge solutions in digital dentistry. Attendees can explore hands-on demonstrations of biomix, stain, and glaze techniques, something many guests have mentioned on here before, along with some of their other innovative technologies. Adite will also host engaging lectures and Grand Suite 2 that's in the East Tower, covering topics such as EZ Near, 3D Pro Zur, digital dentures, and their Adite cloud design service. And even before you go, you can stay updated by following at Adite North America on all social media platforms. And don't miss this opportunity to see how Adite is shaping the future of dental labs. Tell them you heard them on Voices from the Bench, and we appreciate your support of the podcast, Adite. Voices from the Bench. The interview. It was actually one of my biggest fears starting the podcast. Then I just started to embrace it. It's not me, it's their names.
It is. It's my name. I had a school teacher in like eighth grade or something. He's like, he tore it up. He's like, is Voldemort here? And I'm like,
Voldemort.
What's the worst one?
Yeah. Super excited today to talk to a lab owner out of Florida. And unfortunately, our co-host, the lab person out of Florida, couldn't be with us. But we're welcoming Vladimir Roman to the podcast. How are you, sir?
Good, good. I'm very excited and very honored to be here on this podcast, Elvis. Like I said, I listen to you guys very, very often, and Spotify just makes it so easy to pull up your podcast. I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started. It just rolls right into the next episode. I love it.
Yep. The technology's awesome.
Vladimir? Am I saying it right?
Vladimir, it's okay. You can call me whatever. I know you're talking to me.
Yeah, okay. Well, sir, tell us. How did you get into the industry? What started you in dental?
That's an awesome story. I'd love to share it because, I had no idea a dental lab existed. So graduating high school, I had to do something with my life. And my cousin,
Yep.
who at the time was in the Marines, he's like, hey, you should go in the military, go into Air Force. They'll take care of you. He's like, just whatever you do, don't go into Army and the Marines because the quality of life is different. So, I took that to heart, and then I went into the Air Force, and I came in basically with something called Open General. And Open
So,
General,
let me
yeah.
stop you for a second. When people tell me that they're going to go into the Air Force, you're going in there because you want to fly planes, right?
Well, I like had a struggle with education in high school, so I was just trying to get anything,
I
and
get you. Yeah.
that was a dream and a goal later on in my career. But yeah, I wanted to do something with airplanes. Exactly.
Okay. I just want to make sure. That's what I think of as a civilian, what the Air Force, is.
Yeah, I had the same mindset. Like I was going to work on airplanes. I was going to do something with aviation, but come to find out, Everything
Nope.
changed yeah, it was completely like different. I didn't know they had their own medical, and so I was like, oh, cool, I'll put some of these medical jobs on there. And at the very bottom, I saw like dental lab, and I was like, oh, I'll put that as my number five choice because they give you five choices.
And it was your fifth one.
It was my fifth one. It just sounded kind of cool in the description, but I had never heard of it. I didn't even know it existed. This was circa 2003.
Was dental one through four at all?
So they had dental assisting, and
Yep.
so I came in on the enlisted side. So the enlisted side, you basically have two jobs for dental assisting and dental lab. And
Yeah.
then that's pretty much it. And I was looking at the two because, to be a dentist, you kind of come in with you're already accepted to dental school or you graduated dental school already.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I came in to the Air Force, I just said, "Hey, I just want to go. Put me wherever you can put me." And
Oh.
then in boot camp, they give you the list of five choices. And
Okay.
at that point,
Gotcha.
I was like, "Okay, dental lab. That sounds good." That's what I got like halfway through boot camp, and then I went to go training. At the time, it was Shepherd Air Force Base up north in Texas, right at the border of Oklahoma and at Texas, like the
Uh huh.
Panhandle area.
That's where you did your dental training or just boot camp?
Yep, the boot camp was in San Antonio. So at the time it was 7 weeks, and then after 7 weeks, I went up to Shepherd Air Force Base to do the technical training. It's a CODA accredited program, even to this day, and it was 6 months long. And then on top of that, you have on-the-job training that goes on for like probably about 2 years. You
Wow.
know, yeah. So it's a
Yeah.
very, very extensive, robust training system they have.
So I've heard this name. I don't know who I heard, but was Pat Coon one of your teachers?
So I knew about Pat Coon when I went to tech school. He was kind of like the generation of instructors before the ones I had. So
Okay.
he trained all of the instructors that I was under. Gary Osborne, Mr. Kenny Miller, Mr.
Yeah.
Gary
Yeah.
Johnson. So all these different instructors were always talking about Mr. Pat Coon, and so he was like a legend. When I
Yeah.
came
Okay.
through.
Nice. Nice. So when you start, do they just teach you everything? Do you have to apply to get into like fixed or removable? How's that whole process work?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting process. And if anybody's thinking about getting into the dental lab field, man, I would hands down recommend them to look at the military as a viable option. A, they're going to pay you while you're going to school. It's not much,
Nice.
but you're getting paid. And then
Yep.
B, all the instructors are CDT. So they're all certified, and they all have vast amounts of experience. And then when you go to training, so you start out with, I think now it's 6 blocks of training, and each block is like, a few months or a few weeks long, depending, but you start
Mm-hmm.
out with stone models. You do the impressions, then you go on to dentures, RPDs, and then you move on to the fix. So each section is kind of a block, and that's just like at the basic dental lab school. It's about 6 months long, and then by the time you get through it, you're doing everything from dentures to RPDs. You're doing some implant screw retained. You're doing a lot of CAD nowadays, a lot of 3D printing, and then you're going into you finish up with porcelain work, stacking and that kind of takes the
Yeah. Yeah.
hardest and the longest time to master. So they finish you up with that, but they give you a really good overview about the dental lab career field in basic dental lab school. And then from there, you go on to your first duty station, and then on the job training happens. And that's where you take like the basic knowledge you gained, you apply it, and then you really specialize. Your supervisors kind of do more training on actual patients instead of training cases. And then from
Mm-hmm.
there, every technician finds their niche. And, I happen to like fixed, something about wax, waxing up a crown. I found it really
Yeah.
enjoyable. You put your headphones in, you like wax up a bunch of units, you look up, it's lunchtime, you go to lunch, you come back, you
Yeah.
do it all over. It was really fun. So I love fixed work when I was stationed in San Antonio, which was my base after Shepherd Air Force Base. And then from there, some technicians will go into the RPDs and the dentures, others will go into the fixed, and then some others go into the ortho because we had ortho in there as well. So they have like
Oh
all the
wow.
specialties in San Antonio, Texas, where my first duty station was. It's kind of like the mecca of dental in San Antonio. Everybody has to go through there at one point in their career.
So all technicians that go through the service go through that base?
Yeah, so the schoolhouse moved from Shepherd, and it's a tri-service school. So we trained with the Army, we trained with the Navy, and then the Air Force, of course, was hosting it at the time. They moved this school down to San Antonio, Texas, which is much better because Shepherd Air Force Base, it's a beautiful area, but there's just not much to do out there when you're a young
I get
person
it.
in your
Yeah.
late teens, early 20s. You kind of want to go out and enjoy the life. So San Antonio, when they moved that, it was a great move because it kind of just made the school environment a little bit more enjoyable. So you go to San Antonio for about 6 months, and then from there, you would move on to your first duty station. And most of the airmen and soldiers and Marines, they kind of got their like larger dental labs that they go to train. So for
Hmm.
the Air Force, the larger base for lab training is San Antonio, Texas, right down the road, where actually you go to boot camp. So it's kind of like a rude awakening. You leave boot camp, you go to train down the road, and then you come back to boot camp
Back.
base. You kind of got a little bit of like PTSD going on, when you go back to that boot camp environment. But it's good. It's good.
Are there options to go to like more exotic places with this experience? I mean, can you be a dental technician in Hawaii or something?
That's an awesome question because after you graduate dental lab school, more often than not, you're going to go to a training base.
Uh
But
huh.
sometimes you do get to go to like overseas assignments. They have a big lab in Ramstein, Germany for Air Force. They have a big lab in Kadena, Japan, which is kind of like their
Oh, very
Hawaii.
cool.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have, and every Air Force base has a dental lab. So at least one dental lab tech is going to be in the Air Force base. We have assignments in Hawaii. They have assignments in England. I got stationed in Japan after San Antonio. So
Oh,
that was
that's
like my first,
awesome.
yeah, that was my first operational base was in Japan. It was the northern part of Japan. So it was like, a little bit isolated, but the culture, the lifestyle, everything was amazing up there.
I mean, just to experience it, it's just got to be amazing.
It is. It is.
I've heard that on, maybe you don't know, but you seem to be very knowledgeable about it, but dental lab technicians on battleships, is that a thing?
That is a thing. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what I thought.
Yep. I work with a lot of Navy. They call them dental corpsmen, Navy corpsmen, and then they actually have to go through their training is a little unique. So they have to go be basically a medical technician, and then after they get done with being a medical technician, then they shred out to go be a dental assistant. And then after they get done being a dental assistant, they apply to go to dental lab, and then they go to dental lab school. So they have to go through three different schools, Navy does, before you even become a lab tech. The Air
Oh,
Force just
wow.
goes straight to lab.
So they do almost three duties on a battleship.
No, they don't. They don't have to go to like the operational Navy, but they do have to graduate like the school, the training. And so they
Fascinating.
they, they go to that school in San Antonio, like all medical training for the military is in San Antonio, Texas, pretty much. So they go through the Navy does. They go through like nursing school for basic technicians, then they go through dental assisting school, and then finally they get into lab school. So they have to like really go through the whole gambit in order to get to the lab. So I get hats off to the Navy guys because not only they have to be in a ship for like months on out doing lab work, they also have to go through all that training. So
That's impressive. And I'm sure it's pretty small quarters. I mean, working in those things.
yeah, yeah. A good friend of mine, Cliff Robertson, he was in the Navy for 16 years, and yeah, he was on the ship, and they had to keep everything so clean and so tidy because they're living in such quarters.
Yeah.
That was like the cleanest lab he's ever been to was on a ship.
Ones that nobody will ever see.
Yeah, he used to run the course because I was an instructor with him when I came back to teach after I was out
Oh, no
for a while.
kidding.
Yeah, I went
Yeah.
back to lab school halfway through my career. They kind of handpick you, and they're like, okay, hey, you're doing good. You're gonna go be a teacher. So I
Mm.
went back to lab school, and he was my lead instructor, Cliff Robertson. And man, it was never clean enough in the lab. So
Yeah.
he likes that ship clean environment. That most Navy lab techs do.
What'd you go back and teach?
So I was specializing in the crown and bridge section. So I was doing because
Okay.
that wax up that was my thing. So we taught the basic students how to wax up single units, multiple units. We did casting with the broken arm system at the time,
Oh, wow.
and then we got him into a little bit of an induction casting using the Bagel Nautilus,
Mm-hmm.
induction casting machines. And then after that, I moved on to porcelain work because my second passion was kind of porcelain. So I went on to teach the porcelain block, and then lastly, like the last tour I was there, I kind of moved on to more like the leadership role. So I was kind of training the instructors and tracking their hours and that kind of stuff. And then I worked in the advanced section. In the advanced school, you kind of go back. So after you've been out in the Air Force or Army and the Navy for a while, you kind of come back for advanced training because it never ends, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah.
When you come back, you do like more complex cases. You work on implants. You do complex orthodontic appliances, and then implant supported dentures. So you come back for training, and I was running that block for a little while before I left.
Interesting. So you mentioned earlier that they're printing and designing. So your whole time you're there, you still loved hand waxing, but yet there was like three shape of exocad sitting right there. Or...
Yeah, so it's funny because the Air Force was typically like behind the industry. When I joined the Air Force, we got our first CAD CAM machine back from like '04,
Oh,
and
okay, yeah.
so it was a little later than it's been out. It was like the old Ceric compact
Mm-hmm.
mailbox. It was tiny, but man, this thing was like amazing to us, right? And so
Sure.
when I got to the schoolhouse, everything was still being analog, and there was very little digital involvement in it. Digital is kind of my forte too because I got my degree in computer science, and I'm a computer nerd.
When
I
did you
love
get your degree in the middle of all this?
Oh,
Before?
it was like, yeah. So you chip at it, you work at it, and it was about 13 years while I was in. I think I actually got my actual official degree while I was an instructor.
Wow.
I was thinking to myself, if I'm going to train these guys, I got to have like a little bit of a formal background. So I got my degree in computer science, and I graduated halfway through my instructor tour. And while I was there, I was like taking a lot of CAD courses, a lot of programming, and I was like, hey, we need to push the curriculum to be more digital because that's the future, right?
Oh,
And this is back,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, this is back in 2016, so it was already really really prevalent out in the industry, but it was just the military was behind.
Mm-hmm.
So our new curriculum that got pushed out, and it was getting developed while I was there, was heavily relied on the digital workflows. They ordered a bunch of Formlab printers, and then we were big into the Sirona CAD CAM
Yep.
system, the InLab
In lab.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we were before we were mainly predominantly in lab, and then there was a shift towards exocad. So most of the new technicians are going to be familiar with exocad that are graduating.
That's awesome. What a jump for them though, from in lab to exocad.
Yeah, they both have their roles.
Oh,
I
of
think
course.
Yeah, I think InLab was a really user friendly, really cohesive, like almost seamless way to get a crown in and out really fast.
Yeah.
But the complex stuff, you really needed the exocad or a three shape. Most labs didn't have three shape. There was very few that had. Most of them nowadays are going to have exocad.
So where did you get your experience on that?
Well, I started on the in lab back when it was like the red cam. I don't know if you remember the red cam at all,
I
but
do. Yeah.
that thing was so crazy. You take one picture, you have to move it just a little bit, take another picture, and
Yep.
move it. And if you moved it wrong, you had to start from the beginning.
And you had to
And
spray everything.
oh yeah, that scan spray was fun. I kind of got used to the smell and I started enjoying it. But
Oh no.
yeah, but
That's a bad sign
probably
there,
a bad
dude.
sign, right? That's not good when you're looking forward to scanning models for today.
When you're
Um,
taking hits on your day off, that's not good.
the lab already as it is, you got the monomer and you got all the other stuff
Yeah.
going on. Add a little scan spray, you're set. But it was a big jump going from, we used to use the slip material, the old Ceramco, all ceramic
Mm-hmm.
material. So I got trained on that when I was a young airman, and I was like going in there and layer by layer would build up the zirconia. Like it wasn't zirconia, but it was like a really strong substructure. And
Sure.
then we could stack all ceramic porcelain on top of that, and that took forever. I mean, you had refractory models and all that kind of stuff you had to deal with too.
It's a process. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And so then when that red cam came in, even though we had to like deal picture by picture, it was still so much faster than doing it the other way, the analog way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started gaining more and more knowledge throughout the years. I wound up doing 20 years total in the Air Force, and I went through the whole
Wow.
gambit from apprentice all the way up to managing labs. And yeah, so it's been an awesome journey.
Okay, so 20 years, you've done your service, you've learned all that you can learn. What'd you do?
Yeah, so about my 17, 18-year mark, I was like, hey, I got to start thinking about what I'm going to do after the military.
Sure.
I had a deployment. I went to Iraq for a while there, and had a lot of ancillary duties that kind of took a toll on the body and the mind. And so I
You
was
mean
like, hey,
non-dental stuff they made you do?
yeah, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
military. So I got
Sure.
deployed to Iraq in '07.
Wow.
So it was like, the height of operations over there after
Yeah.
everything went down. And so that was like a security detail. And then after that, when I was in Japan, I was part of something called like a cargo deployment force where we had to build these huge pallets that had to go out in case the jets had to deploy to Korea. And so throughout that time, you kind of like it's wear and tear on the body, and then you can only do that so much. So I was looking at like 17-year mark. I was like, I can't go long past 20. I gotta kind of ease it back and kind of take it easy on on
Sure.
on
20 years
my
is a long time for
it,
anything, man.
it is a long
Yeah.
time. It is a long time. So I was like looking, okay, I love computers. I love
Yep.
dental lab. and I kind of want to do something digital with computers. And looking at it when I was at Wright Pat, the assignment before my last assignment, I was Wright Pat, Ohio, Wright Patterson Air Force Base. So they had a
Oh
3D
yeah,
printer.
I've been there.
You've been to Dayton, that area?
Yeah, the Air Force Base, the museum.
That's a beautiful museum, isn't it? It's
It's
huge.
awesome. It's
Is
huge.
huge. We used to love going there like on the weekends when we had nothing to do. We would just
Yeah.
go look at a hangar. We'd have to pick a hangar because you can't go through all of them in one day. So we'd pick one of the hangars, look at all the airplanes in that one hangar, then go home and then save the next one for like the next week, you know?
It is literally an all day to not even see everything. It's that big. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, so while I was there, there was Form Labs and right pad. There was a Form Labs printer sitting in the corner collecting dust, and I was like,
Oh
"Hey, what
wow.
is this?" I just got out of tech school, being an instructor, technical training, and so I went there and I started playing with it, and then surgical guides was kind of coming up in that lab. We had a couple of oral surgeons, Dr. Russell and Dr. Ingoldsby, and they were doing a
Mm-hmm.
lot of implant cases. And they're like, "Hey, to make us faster, we could use these surgical guides." And I was like, "What's that? What's a surgical guide?"
They didn't teach
And
that to you in the Navy?
no, no, in the Air Force, no, they didn't,
No,
because
Air
like,
Force. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's nowhere near. Like I said, the Air Force is behind. So this was
Yeah.
like circa 2018. The Air Force is behind on like kind of the tech, the digital side. They're really competent on the analog, but the digital side behind. So I never heard of like implant planning. I never heard of a CBCT machine. I never heard like
That's
of all that
crazy.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So finally, I got in there and we started. I started playing with some software. We downloaded. We got Blue Sky Plan.
Yep.
And then we were kind of looking at how to design the guides. And so then, working on the surgical guide kits, and I was like, hey, this is really fun. This is like it's the best of both worlds. I got the digital, and then I got the hands-on part after you 3D print them. And so I just love surgical guides. It was really, really fun to do.
Hmm.
And so then I was like, okay, how much does a guide cost on the outside? And I was like, on average, the guides were anywhere between 250 to 300 is what the doctors that I was talking to they were
Yeah.
saying. And I was like, okay. And then I was doing the numbers. I was like, 3D printing, it takes me this long to do it. And I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense as a business model, you
Yeah.
know?
Doesn't take
So
much resin.
right. It doesn't take much resin, and the printers are so efficient. If you're
Yeah.
not 3D printing now in the lab or as a dentist, you're falling behind. So you
Sure.
you, you got to jump on that wave. And so that's what I did. I looked at it and I was like, okay, so I'm going to start my lab. So I started my lab in my basement in Ohio. I was fighting like the spiders and the ghosts in my basement, trying to put something together there. And I bought this Form Labs printer. It's like a very basic, the very new one, like their
Yeah.
newest model they had at the time. And I was like, okay. So then I started doing a few cases here and there, and then I started getting busier and busier. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of taking off. So then I started getting some help with some virtual assistants. I had some team
Mm-hmm.
members that I worked with in the past, and they were helping me out remotely because I was able to set that up. And then from there, it just kind of took off. I moved the lab when I PCSed out of when I left Wright Patterson Air Force Base. I moved my lab here, and it was still just a single man lab at the time back in 2020. And then kind of kept growing, got a little office here in Florida, and then got some more team members here locally. So it's just been growing the last couple years before I retired. I was kind of growing it, and now we're up to 12 team members strong. We
Wow.
did we did 1,600 surgical guides last year, and
1,600?
yes, yes, 1,600
Wow.
surgical guides. It's like our vision for Romanax Dental Lab, which is the name of our lab, is to make the world a better place one smile at a time. And so and the way I tell my team members is that's 1,600 smiles, 1,600 lives that we improved. So that's a great impact for our team and for our clients that we're helping out. So yeah, and so now we're just kind of leapfrogging every year, growing incrementally, and we just love to be able to empower and enable other dentists and other labs, because at the end of the day, we're not doing a lot of restoring. Some of the labs that we work with, they refer to us the surgical guides, and then they're there to kind of finish up the case. But most of the work,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, most of the work when you place the implant, it's got to be in the right place. If
Oh
if if
yeah.
if the implant's not in the right place, then you're gonna like have to do a custom abutment. It's gonna make the patient kind of wait a little longer. The dentist isn't gonna be happier. It adds cost. So starting at the implant is really, really the key to success when it comes to those kind of workflows.
So when you found this printer and said to yourself, let's do surgical guides, how did you learn about CBCT, how to read it, how to look at an x-ray, where the implants go?
Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good question.
Yeah,
So,
because
I,
it's one thing to design a guide. It's another thing on how to design a guide.
yeah, so that in itself was a lot of back and forth working with the oral surgeons. It
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of feedback with them at the beginning. So, sometimes we would look at the settings and then the implant would be a little like 1 millimeter short. And so I'd have to come back, go to the software and figure out, okay, why is this 1 millimeter short when everything should be right? And then so it was like, really calibrating and nailing down the settings. And I was like, why are the guides coming in too tight? Because, Dr. Russell over there had to adjust the guide quite a bit. So
Yeah,
looking at the settings, calibrating it, 3D printing it again. And so it was just a lot of back and forth, a lot of communication, a lot of feedback.
that's so true. I remember my early days. I do a lot of surgical guides too, and I remember placing implants and just getting a call from the doctors like, "This thing's going right through the buccal wall. Why'd you do that?" And I'm like, "Oh, is that what that is?" That's how you learn.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of that came in the Air Force, which the Air Force is great, is a great training environment because at your whole 20 years plus career, you're always going to be learning.
Oh yeah.
And that's true all the way to the very like last day I was learning stuff about CAD CAM and digital workflows. And so yeah, I got the pleasure and honor to work with some great prosthodontists along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Harding, Dr. Batzer, and then now the most latest one was Dr. Decker. So Dr. Decker, him and his wife, they're both prosthodontists here at Eglin Air Force Base.
Yeah.
So one is at one base and the other one. So both of them, I just learned a lot from them. So it's been just a lot of opportunities that I've taken advantage of in networking and learning about the processes and workflows.
Really finding a clinician that's willing to help you learn is the best way to do these things. It sounds like you found some killer people.
Yes, yes, a lot of mentorship and then a lot of collaboration. That's true, right? You have to be able to collaborate with the dentist, and if the lab tech doesn't have good communication with the dentist, you're just going to have not the best outcome. You still get a good solid restoration or prosthesis, but it's not going to be the best.
So why'd you move it to Florida? Just wanted to live there?
No, no. At the time, it's like 2019, almost 2020, right before COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was getting ready to retire, so I knew my time was going to be up in 2023, and I was expecting to stay in Dayton. I loved the Ohio area, surprisingly, because
Yeah.
before I went to Dayton, I like never really thought about it, and I was going to retire there. Loved our house, our neighbors, everything was good, and then I got put in a position from the Air Force that had nothing to do with dental for one, and then it was a very they call it high ops tempo, meaning like you had a lot of work coming in
Mm-hmm.
and it was I was a security manager dealing with security clearances and all that kind of stuff, but I was just really not in a good spot, mentally, physically I wasn't in a good spot. It was just, I got injured my back.
Oh,
Injured,
geez.
I
Yeah.
injured my back doing some heavy lifting, but anyhow, I was like in a bad spot, and then everything that was pointing me towards Florida. Everything had to like I don't know. I just kind of looking at the signs and watching
Hey.
videos from
Yeah.
Florida, ads from Florida, and then all of a sudden this assignment came up because sometimes these assignments will come up, and at that point you can volunteer for some of the assignments, and
Okay. Yeah.
they were looking for a master sergeant to go to Florida, and I was like talking to my wife, I talked to my daughter, and we were all like looking at it, and I was like, well. Everything seems to be pointing Florida. Let's just put our name in the hat. And so at that point, you
Mm-hmm.
put your name in the hat. Everybody wants to go to Florida, essentially in the Air Force. It's a desirable assignment.
A little bit more inviting than Ohio.
Yeah, yeah. But I loved Ohio. I really did. I
Hey,
liked
I'm
it.
in
And
Indiana, man.
yeah, yeah,
It's
you know what
about the
it's like,
same.
right? Yeah, yeah. It was great. And so, we got selected, we got picked up for Florida, and then we came down here to Eglin Air Force Base, which is right by Destin, Florida. We it's been a journey here the last 5 years. We got here right at the end of COVID, and so it was like night and day. Ohio was locked down. Everybody was like pretty much still in their
Mm-hmm.
houses and not much movement going on. We get to Florida, and everybody's like spring break over here.
Yeah.
It was like night and day.
That's funny. Oh, good old COVID days.
Yeah, yeah. And so so that's when I moved the lab to, because I had to change PCS stations and
Sure.
yeah, most of the growth has been down here in Florida.
So, how did you grow it? Were you working with dentists that left the Air Force, or?
I had
The
a few,
Navy or
yeah, I
whatever?
had a few of those doctors, but the vast majority came from just having word of mouth. If you have a really good quality product, they're gonna tell
Mm-hmm.
their colleagues, and from there, the word's gonna spread, and then next thing you know, you're inundated with work. And the what made us really competitive was our prices and our turnaround times. If a doctor sends us a plan, let's say like in the morning 9 a.m., they're going to get a plan ready to approve 9 a.m. the next day.
Oh, 24-hour turnaround on
Yep.
plans?
Yep, on
Wow.
treatment plans. That's like a virtual tooth waxed up in position and occlusion. You got the implant placed, all the nerves and everything marked, and then if any segmentation for bone guides, we'll do that as well. But they'll get all of that the next day ready for approve. So our workflow is pretty fast. And then our turnaround time, if they approve, let's say they send us the case on a Monday, they approve the case Tuesday morning, it's shipping out Wednesday. Our workflows are really fast, and I think that's really important for the clients. They really appreciate that because when you're doing implants, the last thing you want is a patient to back out of treatment because they change their mind.
100%. Yeah, get it going. Yeah.
So I think that's the key is making sure that they get a good product and a really fast turnaround time. And so that's how we've been able to gain our clientele. But at the same time, making that scalable is challenging in the lab. Everything has to go according to plan for that to happen. And so our virtual work, like our remote workers, are key to that. If you're not using virtual assistants or virtual workers in the lab, I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
So you have people planning these cases that aren't in Florida, not in your building?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're planning it from, Texas. I had somebody working in Colorado for a while, and then I had some of these technicians I've trained and worked with personally, so I know how they work, and operate. And then we also have just some administrative team members that they track orders, they communicate with clients, they respond to emails. I like to think of it as a principle. It's like from the military, right? It's called centralized control, decentralized execution. So all these team members are
Oh,
working
yeah.
across different places, but you're still able to control it from one hub, one lab.
Interesting. So a doctor sends in a case. Is there someone that kind of QCs it? Because I see so many CBCT scans that come in. They're just like, dude, this is garbage. I can't do anything with this.
Yeah, the software does a lot of the editing and kind of filtering out of the CBCT. But we
Mm-hmm.
do have somebody that initially looks at the scans and makes sure we have everything we need. A lot of doctors that we send stuff back for are either like the intro scans are not accurate, or maybe the CBCT is only a quadrant scan. We can still work with those cases, and we let the doctor know, say, hey, doctor, you're gonna get a guide, but in order to be really accurate, you want to have a full arch CBCT scan, and you want to
Sure.
have a full arch intraoral scan without, a lot of distortion or a lot of scatter or anything like that. And outside of that, we do have someone QC and everything before it comes in. Yep.
This is probably a personal question that for me, because I do some surgical guides, if you get a CBCT scan and it's got a lot of scatter, is there anything that the doctor can do on their end to lessen the scatter?
Yeah, if it's stuff that's fixed, if it's stuff that's like an implant, you
Yeah.
can't really reduce the scatter, right? But if
Yeah.
it's something like a denture that they're wearing or an RPD they're wearing, I would have them take that off when they take the
Yeah.
scans,
I get that,
So
but just some of these, you got a full mouth of PFMs, and it's just like, what am I supposed to do with this?
yeah, let me ask you this: what software are you using to
Oh,
edit the
yeah, great.
CBCTs?
I do a few of them. So I do Co-Diagnostic and I do Real Guide, and I've messed with Unite a little bit.
Okay, check out Blue Sky Plan.
Are you still using that?
Blue Sky Plan is really good at clearing up the scatter.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the majority of our work. We're looking at switching to 3Shape for the implant studio, but Blue Sky Plan is been our bread and butter. And
Yeah.
the great thing about Blue Sky Plan is that the doctors can view their plans at their clinics like without having to pay any software fees or any dongles or nothing. So if a doctor wants to review the plan in a 360-degree environment, they can do that free of charge with Blue Sky Plan you
Oh,
know
can they move
and
the implants?
they can move the implants, they can get it exactly where they want it, and they usually they'll so we have some clients that do that. they don't want to take the time to do all the editing and adding teeth and nerve mapping and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So we'll do all that for them. They take a look at the plan, they view it in a 360-degree environment, they make tweaks, minor movements, maybe go in a little deeper into bone, maybe have this
Yep,
angle,
yep.
whatever they want, spend 5 minutes or less, and then save the plan, and then it automatically syncs it back to our lab. So then
Oh,
after
that's
that,
cool.
the implant's placed, and then we take it from there. We design the guide and print it out and that kind of thing.
That's a nice feature to be able to let them do those final tweakings rather than 13 emails to move an implant
Yeah, yeah. I
slightly
mean,
lower.
the goal for us is to minimize the amount of time that the doctor is spending, reviewing the case and making updates. Now, and there are times, especially if it's like, an all on four and all on six, we meet virtually with the doctor. So we'll meet with the doctor live and then make any live updates, one of our technicians. And then at that point, it does take maybe 10, 15 minutes to go over the case, depending if it's like a single arch or multiple arch.
Yeah. So you do those bone reduction guides and all of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We do a lot of those. I think we're maybe like 4 or 5 a week we're designing and printing out.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of our workflows are just bone reduction, but some of the doctors really like doing the immediate loading prostheses.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll 3D print the immediate loading prostheses ready for the doctors to do like a temporary pickup, and then they can do that one day surgery smile workflow that they like.
Are you doing it so the prostheses connects to the stackable guide or?
Yep, yep. You can do it that way. There's a lot of different workflows that we implement depending on the case. The more
Mm-hmm.
reliable one is to use stabilizing pins to orient the bone reduction guide, and
Yep.
then you would do an osteotomy guide that either interlocks or has magnets attached to it, however you want to do it.
Magnets.
Yep,
Wow.
yep. You can use little magnets to connect them. It just
Where
depends
do
on
you get your
honestly.
magnets? Hobby Lobby or?
No, they're like really small, like 4 millimeter magnets from Amazon, and you
Oh,
can
really? That's
incorporate them into the
great.
guide so then they're like covered in resin and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty seamless for the doctor. It's whatever the doctor likes. Some doctors hate the magnets and they're like, I don't want to use the magnets. They're terrible.
Yeah.
And so then we'll do something more interlocking, maybe with like some pins or something like that. Or some doctors are like, I don't want the pins. They're kind of a pain to get in and out. So then instead of the pins holding the osteotomy guide on the bone reduction guide, it'll just sit like right on top of it and index by itself on top of the bone reduction guide.
Wow.
And so it just depends on the client's preference, whatever their preference is. And then the key thing is that the MUAs and all that have to match to where that prosthesis is going to be at, the temporary
Yeah.
hybrid, right? And so that's the key there, is making sure that everything's lined up for them when they go to pick up. It minimizes their surgical time, immensely when you do that right.
Wow. So you got 12 people designing all these things?
We have four designers, and then the rest are like admin, ancillary team members. So they're dealing with the customer care. They're doing our inventory supply, and I talk to a lot of other like fellow lab owners, and I try to
Yeah.
encourage them. Hey, if you're not having remote workers doing the stuff that's because you don't want your experienced technician having to update inventory or like reorder supplies or have to deal with like a refund issue. So you want
Sure.
your lab technicians to be doing the lab work that's going to be more efficient and more productive. So for every lab tech we have here on site, we have two virtual assistants supporting them.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Yeah, and I think that was the key for me being able to step back and not just do it all myself all day every day. I got those first two virtual assistants helping me out, and that enabled me to get enough growth and profit to hire another technician.
Another one. Yeah.
Mhm.
Are you still designing cases?
I do the complex stuff. So I like to do like because it's just fun for me. It's kind of like playing video games,
Sure.
right?
No,
So
I
I
get it. I get it.
yeah,
I love figuring it out. Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of fun. I get to pick and choose the complex and fun cases now. And so, but sometimes I get a little overwhelmed and I got to work on the business itself. So I have to take a step
Yeah.
back and say, hey,
Yeah.
Preston, you get this one. So yeah, that kind of thing is kind of fun being able to pick and choose which
Well,
ones you
what's a
want.
complicated case for you? Is it hard bone to find to place the implant, or is it just
It's the number of
restoratively?
implants. Yeah, so the harder cases are the upper and lower all in six. You got 12 implants, sometimes even more, and then you have to make sure that the kit and everything matches to the
Yeah.
doctor's kit. And so that's the hardest part. And I kind of take on those kits that are very not well known. Like the
Hmm.
Nobel Biocare, the Blue Sky Bio, the Strawman, the the biohorizons.
Biohorizon, yeah.
Those are really easy to do. It's the automage, it's the miss, it's the megagens, it's the hyacinths that are like get tricky, or
Yeah.
like the universal real guide. It's very new. So like the very like not popular surgical guides are the ones that I kind of focus on because you really have to take the time to get those settings right. If you don't get those settings right, implant's going to go through a nerve, implant's going to go through the sinus. It's just not going to be good for the dentist.
I learned the hard way, making sure you knew exactly what surgical kit the doctor has when making a guide.
Yeah, yeah.
He goes, I have Astra. I was like, what could go wrong? Picked Astra. None of them
Uh-huh.
fit because it was a
Oh.
certain Astra. So that's my tip of the day.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not anything you did. Sometimes it's a software update, and this has been my pet peeve. I hate updating
Yeah.
software, but it's a software update and the software will select the wrong tube or wrong cylinder, even though, it's saying it's supposed to be good, but it's the wrong cylinder. I had this happen yesterday or a day before.
Oh, wow.
We
Yeah.
had a doctor from New Jersey. They got their case and say, "Hey, the wrong cylinder was inserted, and your drill report says the wrong cylinder." And I looked at it and I was like, it does say the wrong cylinder. So it was a bug in the software that was spitting out the wrong cylinder. But now we know on that particular kit with that particular implant diameter, we have to look and make sure. So it's just a lot of those nuances that you come across. And I hate updating software for that reason, man.
And every implant system will come out with a new part every other week. And
Yeah, that's tricky.
I'm like,
That
what
is
is this? We just brought it out. I'm like, it's not in my software, but you have to use it. That doesn't make sense.
that is very time consuming and very hard to figure out if it's not in the software.
Yeah. I wish we could just do one implant system. I'd be a happy person.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because while I was in the Air Force, they were only able to pick like two implant systems. You either get Nobel or you get Straumann, and that's it,
Nice.
And it made it real easy in the Air Force. But when I came out, that's not the case, right?
No, no. I think it's about every 3 months I hear about an implant I didn't even know existed. I hear a
Yeah,
new one. I bet you get it all the time.
all the time. And it's great for the companies because they're innovating, they're making better products, and they're making it easier. Like when surgical kits went from a keyed kit where they had to insert these
Mm-hmm.
little sleeves to
Yep,
a
yep.
keyless kit, that was like a huge improvement for them. And it was a huge improvement for us because the software makes it real easy to switch the different lengths, different sizes. With the keys, it was a little trickier to calculate all that.
Yeah, but I never knew which one had the keyed and who had the keyless, and that's where I mess up. That's why I learned
Yeah,
you gotta ask, and you have to ask somebody that knows, not the front desk that just says, I think so. So,
Yeah, yeah, we've been there. We've been there
oh
way too
yeah.
many times, and I'm like a stickler when it comes to verifying the kit. So we have
Yeah.
different checkpoints when we do our workflow. So when it comes in, we have to verify the kit. When you plan it, you verify the kit. When the plan gets QC, you verify the kit, and so on and so forth through the whole gambit. And if I can
Yeah.
see in our system, hey, Michelle, you did not verify the kit. What happened here? It turns out to be good, but then you wind up catching a lot of those issues at that point.
Sure. I'm going to demand a picture of their kit. Send me your. I want to know which one you have.
It's important. It's really important when you're doing surgical guides.
You talked about Form Labs at the beginning. What are you printing all these things on now?
It just depends on what resin you're going to be using. So we have access to Form Labs. We have access to the Sprint Ray. We have access to some of the hobby printers. We have
Yep.
access to the Nextdent 5100 is a really solid printer. So it just depends on what the application is. For the surgical guides, I probably recommend doing the Nextdent resin. That's a really
Mm-hmm.
good resin. But then again, Form Labs is a really great printer when it comes to delegating, and it's got a huge print platform. So that kind of just depends on what we're doing for today. But we have 12 different printers at our lab. And I think we
12
got
different?
not 12 different, but we have 12 printers, and each one is dedicated to that specific material.
You don't swap out materials.
No, no, you don't swap out
Oh, okay.
materials because when you swap out materials, you have waste, and
Oh, yeah.
it
Yeah,
takes
yeah,
time,
yeah.
and then you got to buy more vats, and then you got to, so it's just a nightmare having it. So if anybody's in the market thinking about getting into dental printing, make sure you have a plan to make it scalable. If you're not making it scalable when it comes to, and I learned this in the Air Force, like when I got to Wright Pat, Ohio, we had that one printer, and it was great for surgical guides, but guess what? the orthodontist needed to print some models to their indirect bonding trays. So then you had to
Mm.
swap out the resin a little bit. So then we had to go to the commander and say, hey, commander, we need more printers. Look at the output we're getting. So he bought us three Formlabs printers. And then from there, we designated each one. One was for models, one was for surgical guides, the other one was for temp crown resin or whatever, you know. But at that point, then it becomes really easy to kind of just come in and make everything streamlined.
Yeah. And you only do what? Models, surgical guides, and the occasional prosthesis if they want it?
Yeah, we have hard night guards as well, which we don't do too many of them, but we have the Key Splint by
Yep.
Keysoft, or is it Keysoft by Key Splint? I forget what it is, but we have that material for hard night guards. We have denture material. We do temporary crown and bridge. We're getting into printing the Bago Trinity Q. I think it's Trinity Q,
Oh, yeah.
the new permanent crown and bridge. So we're looking at testing that out here soon. We do a Rodin for the All in X cases, the Titan full arch case
Yeah.
resin. And then, I mean, I love the Nextdent surgical guide resin. We've used a lot of other different surgical guide resins, but the Nextdent is like the best, I think, in my opinion.
Why? What makes it better? I mean, it's a surgical guide. It just needs to click on and hold
Yeah,
a cylinder. What's
it's very consistent. It's very easy to grind. Our
Yeah.
supports, the way we design our supports, because everything takes time. So when you're in there and you're designing supports for some of these other resins, they tend to clump up. So like that, all those supports that are in there, sometimes depending on the resin, they tend to just wind up into one huge glob. And so our
Mm,
technicians have to spend like way too much time trying to remove the supports. So with the Nextdent,
interesting.
man, you can get those supports really small and really thin, and so, it really comes into dialing the settings on the printer. But when you do that, it almost comes off like Velcro. So you're in there, you clip a couple of the large supports, you do a little twist, and I just love to hear that little Velcro coming off the guide,
Yeah. No, I
It just
get
was
it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So when it does that, and that's why I like Nextent resins for surgical guides.
Yeah, interesting. And it's funny that you say it's mostly because of the supports.
Yeah, supports are like, man, that's another thing you really have to consider when you're 3D printing. If you don't place your supports, like let's take a crown for example. If you're 3D
Yeah.
printing a crown and you put a support on a contact, you're just going to be setting yourself up for failure. It's like adding a sprue on interproximal contact when you're milling.
100%.
You're
Yeah,
going to be in there
100%.
grinding forever. So in order to do that, you really have your technicians that are doing the nesting really have to take their time. So like we have team members that only do nesting. So their
Wow.
whole job is to take a surgical guide, a prosthesis, a bone, whatever it is, and all they're doing is adding these supports manually. So they go step by step and they're manually adding, and it's very time consuming, but at the same time, it saves way more time on the back end, having to grind and having to mill and having to redo all these different things that have to fit, precise.
Are you saying the automatic supports the software gives you is not enough or too many?
It's both. Sometimes it's not enough, and sometimes it's too
Oh,
many. It
jeez.
just depends on what you're printing out. And so
So strange.
we have like, step by step support instruction. You start out with like minimal supports for the light supports, and then you manually have to add medium supports to certain sections, and then look at the heavy stuff. So we go from light to heavy, and then you have to look at the heavy stuff. Is this part that's printing going to be able to get supported by what's there? No. Then we add a heavy. So it's time consuming, and that's the key to making sure you don't have a print failure. It's way more time consuming to have a print failure, have to clean the vat, have to filter out the resin, than it is to spend more time nesting and adding supports manually.
Come on, AI. This is where you should be working on right now is better supports. I mean,
See, I don't like, I understand we're moving towards AI and all that, but you know what's better than AI is intelligence. So when we have a technician doing it the right way, artificial intelligence is not going to measure up yet. I don't think. I don't
no,
think. Not for
no.
these things. You're always going to need the lab tech looking at this stuff.
You would think the computer would get closer to the supports needed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would think, and then you're over there scraping the failure out of your vat, and you're like, man, this
Yeah,
stinks.
it's not worth
I've
it.
done that way too many times,
It's not
hoping
worth
the
it.
auto supports were enough.
Yeah, I get it. So, do you teach people how to do surgical guides? Do I see this on your website?
I love to train people on how to do surgical guides. I have a course that we put together. We also have some 3D printing, I think, education opportunities. We have a webinar coming up on the 24th of February talking about surgical guides.
Nice.
We're going to be going over some of our workloads that we mentioned here. And then, I love to train doctors and other labs that we work with because it is like a give and take. So some of our dentists and some of our lab techs want to print out their own guides. So what we'll do is we'll get the plan we'll treatment plan it, we'll get all the scans together, and then we'll send an STL file to be printed at a lab. And so the
Mm-hmm.
lab will take it from there and they'll finish it. But they need to know how to like finish that and how to nest that kind of surgical guide, you know? So then we'll work with them one on one and do some training like that.
That's great. So, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? The Roman, how do you say it? Romanax?
Yeah, Romanax. So if you go to our website, www.romanax.com, you can book a meeting with one of our technicians. You can place an order. We have free demos too if anybody wants to get a free surgical guide and see if it'll work out for their lab or for their clinic. Sometimes it just doesn't click or whatever. Our workflow is not efficient. Like we don't do a lot of stone models. I don't think we've gotten a model in like 3 months.
I would hope not.
All of our stuff is digital, and if there's a doctor out there that really likes to take impressions, like we're probably not the lab to work with on that. We'll definitely out like let them know, kind of reference them to a great lab that will be able to do that. But it's just not in our workflow. We can't handle that.
Yeah. But you are doing Crown and Bridge, right? I mean, you're doing regular lab work. I say regular, but non surgical guide lab work.
Yeah, we're we're doing Crown and Bridge. Like I said, it's not our majority. It's not like our bread and butter. I think 95% of our cases are surgical guides, and then the other 5%, like the night cards, the dentures, the Crown and
Yeah.
Bridge. So it's not like a huge part of our workflow. And in fact, I personally don't like to get into that realm. I'd rather have one of these labs that's got a mill access to them because we don't have a single mill in our lab. It's all 3D printed.
Wow.
So I'd
Yeah.
rather outsource the milled restorations, the zirconias out to those labs that have invested in that. In the numbers for me, it doesn't make sense for me to mill out a $40 crown and pay $40,000 for a mill machine. How many crowns am I going to have to make in order to make that
A
money back?
lot. A lot. Yeah.
It just didn't make a lot of sense. Where now you're getting permanent restorations that are becoming 3D printed. So I
Yeah.
think we're just going to skip milling and just go straight to 3D printing finals. That's our next initiative that we're working on here at
It's
Romanax.
definitely getting there. I imagine these doctors you're doing these all on X guides for are coming back to you asking you to do the restorative part of it too. The finals.
They do, and like I said, we do it on a we finish those final cases on a case by case basis. But
Mm-hmm.
I honestly would hand them off to like a trusted lab that they've worked with in the past.
Yeah.
I don't want to kind of dissuade them in a way where, hey, like, you know, I'm not an expert when it comes to milling out all the next cases. I'm an expert in 3D printing and designing them, but I'm not an expert in milling out. So I send that, we basically partner with the milling center and work hand in hand to do them, but it's not a
Good.
huge part of our
Yeah.
workflow.
Sure.
I think that the resins that are coming out, and especially for the all in X cases, the resins that are coming out are becoming a very very good source to do like a long term temporary. And so from there, once the implants have healed, they'll probably have to go the traditional route and get a zirconia or a bar made
Mm-hmm.
or something like that at one of those labs.
How's your relationship with the implant companies? Are they good with you using not their software? I mean, they all have their own now.
Yeah, it's good. I think I'd love to get in touch with more reps from the implant manufacturers. We work a lot with BioHorizon.
Mm-hmm.
Rick down here is a great sales rep here in the Panhandle area. We worked a little bit with the Nobel and the Straumann reps, but honestly, I think there's opportunity there that we're not able to flourish, and I'd love to work with some implant reps in the future. Without having a lot of knowledge about the implant system, it's really hard to get a good guide to the client.
100%. Yeah.
So, our technicians are very aware of the different systems out there. And then if it's something new, it's probably going to come to me. And then I have to do a lot of research and, talk to the
Yeah.
manufacturer about the nuances and differences in their kit or their system. But yeah, that's something that I would love to work with in the future with any sales reps or implant reps out there.
Yeah, the ones that I do, I always try to send the plan also to the local rep. And I'm like, I need you to sign off on this too and make sure this doctor has these parts and is ready
Yeah.
to go and it fits his kit or her kit. I like to connect all my dots because there's been a few times where I haven't and it's not been good.
Yeah, that's definitely a learning process, and we do a lot of that research in-house. But if not, we are always like happy to call the manufacturer and clarify something. Most of the time, the dentist will be like, "I don't know, I need to talk to my sales rep," and I say, "Hey, don't worry
Sure.
about it, dentist. We'll call them and talk with them about it. Just give us their number." So we'll have to do that
Yeah.
quite often.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's got to be a group effort. every time.
It is. It is. If you want, the best product and outcome for that patient and keep them happy and, have them go tell their friends and family to come back and get more dental implant work done, then you got to do that. And so that's our goal.
Yeah. So will we see you in Chicago in a few weeks? Do you go up to Lab Day or?
You know what? I've always wanted to go. I've never been. I have an engagement in Colorado Springs shortly around that time, and so I have a buddy of mine from the Air Force that's retiring. So I won't
Mm,
I won't make it to Chicago midwinter this year, but our goal is to go next year.
awesome. You should. I think you need to be talking about surgical guides. I don't think enough people do it in our industry. That's not from a company, if that makes sense. If not from
Yeah.
an implant company. And there's a few really good people out there that share that knowledge. And I think it's important. I think there's a lot of people doing surgical guides that aren't as knowledgeable as they should be.
Yeah, I definitely love to educate. Like, when I was instructing in the Air Force, I realized that that's like my third passion when it comes to the industry.
Yeah.
So first is computer science, then it's the actual lab work, and then third is teaching. So yeah, I'd love to teach. I do have like one-on-one sessions if anybody is interested in that on the
Oh,
website, and then
nice.
I have the course, the basic implant planning course. Everything you need to know from A to B to get a surgical guide is in that course. And then we're working on doing like a all-in-X like complex case course. That one's just like it's on the back burner right now because we're just trying to keep up with operations nowadays.
Yeah, I think that's great because even when you get software, the training from those companies is not that good.
Yeah, every software is a little different, and we try to stick with what works. And so for right now, Blue Sky Plan has been pretty much our go-to. With sometimes we'll throw a little like Fusion Works or something like Blender or something in there that's a little different. But most of the
Sure.
time, for your basic surgical guides, Blue Sky Plan can do that really really well.
That's awesome. Well, Valdemar, that's did I say it right?
Vladimir, it's okay.
Vladimir, I'll get it.
There you
Vladimir,
go.
thank you so much, man. That's some really cool stuff. I love what you're doing. I love you built a lab around surgical guides. I think it's so neat. I think if I was ever going to do it, I'd probably go that route.
Thanks, Elvis. It's been an honor, a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking your time to have me on your podcast. I love your podcast. Like I said, I love listening to you guys.
Appreciate that. But seriously, I mean, surgical guides, it's what kept me interested in this industry for so long, and I really enjoy doing it. And it was really great talking to someone that has that same passion.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Elvis. I
Yeah,
appreciate I appreciate everything.
yeah. Thank you, sir. And if we won't see you this year, we'll see you next year in Chicago.
Absolutely, we will.
Yeah, have a good one.
Have a good one, Elvis.
A huge thanks to Vladimir for coming on our podcast and definitely entertaining Elvis with all of your implant and surgical guide talk. It was actually really interesting to hear your story and all that you have accomplished. Pretty amazing and very quick. And I'm happy to say you're in Florida. We especially thank you for your service, obviously, and now the service you are offering to other labs. If any labs out there get requests to do surgical guides, but you are looking for a good outsource option, check out Romanax.com, Romanax.com. But also, if you are a lab looking to learn surgical guides, also check out Romanax.com to see some of the courses that will set you on the right path. Thank you, Vladimir, and good luck to you.
All right, everybody. I'm heading to Chicago. Barb, you will be missed, and we will talk to everyone next week.
All right.
Bye.
You and I will be, what?
I said woohoo.
Oh, sorry. You and I will be at the
The views and opinions expressed on the Voices from the Bench podcast are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the host or Voices from the Bench LLC.